Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Soccerpedia. I am your host, Kai Uchimura, and on today's episode, a long time contributing guest, Jason Longshore, who is the color commentator for Atlanta United, will be here. And please enjoy the show and Happy New Year to everybody. Hey, how's it going, Jason?
Hey guy, how are you, man?
I'm good, I'm good. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, happy New Year.
Yeah. I think I don't see I hear you, but I don't see you.
Um, okay, hold on. Let's do that one.
Oh, there
There
we
we go.
go. Sweet, man. Cool. I wanted to talk about kind of a recap of Atlanta United's soccer season and then a little bit of what to look forward to in 2025. So to start off with, it seemed like how would you describe their 24 season?
Wow. It was a very interesting season because it started with a lot of promise and then went absolutely sideways with bad results at home. That ultimately was a big part of Gonzalo Pineda's dismissal as the manager. Rob Valentino took over, and then there were good things almost initially. But then you had Yorgos Yakimakis leave right as Rob was taking over. You had Thiago Almada's transfer go through, and then there was a drop. It was interesting, though, that after the League's Cup break, I thought the team was much, much better. I thought they were harder to break down. They were much better defensively and much better on the road. And that was maybe the underlying thing that I'll take away from 2024 is this team found a way to be tough to beat when they were away from home. I think they struggled more at home than we're used to, but they were able in the stretch run of the season after the loss at the LA Galaxy. You ended up winning an MLS Cup. They were unbeaten on the road until game one of the Miami series,
Mm-hmm.
and then only lost one more against Orlando on the road. This became a really good team on the road. And I think that says a lot about their character. It said a lot about what Rob Valentino did as the interim manager. And it was a season that had disappointments in it. And overall regular season would be a disappointment getting into the playoffs on the last day.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had an incredibly memorable playoff run where you go to Montreal and win, you win a penalty shootout, and you knock off the best team in league history and Lionel Messi and enter Miami, and then take Orlando to the absolute wire. So it's a mixed bag. It's going to be a disappointment because of how it finished, where it finished, but also how the season went. There's also a lot of positives in it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because back in when the mixed bag, it was definitely in the springtime. It looked absolutely bleak because it was the Atlanta United on like a 8 game winless streak, and then Pineda's like who has recently signed with Atlas in Mexico. So I think he's gonna. I think he still has a future in managing.
He
Or
absolutely has a future in management. I don't think it was Gonzalo Pineda's fault that the team had the record that they did. And I think ultimately, it's easy to make that correlation, but I think Gonzalo, did he get everything right? No, I don't think any manager does. Pep Guardiola hasn't gotten everything right with
mm-hmm.
Manchester City before they went on a bad stretch. It's not like he forgot how to manage.
Yeah.
Um, I think the timing is what ended up hurting Gonzalo more than anything. He's in the last year of his contract. You had an option to continue in 2025,
Yeah.
and they lost too many games at home.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that stage in the middle, and you've decided at that stage that you're not going to pick up the option and continue with Pineda for 2025, and you feel like you can maybe change the fortunes of 24,
Mm-hmm.
you have to kind of make that decision when they did. Gonzalo is a very good coach. I think he's going to be a very good manager. I think Atlas is actually a really good fit for him because I think he's great at developing young talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just didn't get the wins that he needed to here in Atlanta to keep going.
Mm. So we do have, or since the last time we've spoken, we have gotten a new manager in Ronny Deila, who has previously coached over in MLS with New York City FC. He'll have a Norwegian connection with Stian Gregersen, so that might help a little bit with the cultural fits, possibly. What do you make of this signing for?
I really like Ronnie Dyla and what he brings to the table. Out of the candidates that were starting to be talked about with Atlanta United, he was the one that was the most interesting to me. Not just because of what he did at NYC. I mean, he won MLS Cup, so there's not a whole lot of managers who can say that. He won it with that NYC team. He developed a guy like Tati Castellanos into a very expensive player for the club who was not that when he walked in the door. He had success at Celtic as well. He had success in Norway before he moved to Celtic. He's one of those very few managers in the world who's won league titles in 3 different countries.
Mhm,
And that's impressive. That shows an adaptability. That shows an ability to kind of transform his way of playing without losing who he is.
mhm,
And he, in my opinion, from what I've read and seen from him, I think he's a guy who's going to be big on creating a very positive culture around the team. He's going to be very big on continuing to develop, whether we're talking about a young player like a Jaden Hibbert, who's coming into the goalkeeper room,
mhm,
second year with the club, first year with the first team, or a Brad Gazan who's 40 years old. You know, like I think he truly believes that everybody can get better at what they do, and they have to work towards that. But he's also realistic. Mistakes happen. He doesn't, get hung up on game to game individual mistakes. He gets hung up on the 3 month progression, the 6 month progression, the seasonal progression. I like that. I like that a lot. And I think more importantly, he's going to be focused on having an attacking team.
mhm,
And that's something that's a must here in Atlanta, I think. I think this is a fan base that, the word spoiled got used by Frank DeBoer in the early days.
mhm,
I don't think he was necessarily wrong. I think this is a fan base that has seen a lot of great goal scorers and a lot of great teams that were fun to watch going forward. I don't think a team that did not try to play up to that and live up to that would be as successful. If they won, winning cures everything.
mhm,
But I think there is an obligation at a club the size of Atlanta United and with the fan base that it has to entertain and to attack.
mhm. Speaking of some attacking additions, or at least additions in general, there's been rumors that Atlanta United has been looking at Kyogo Furuhashi, who's from Celtic, plays on Japan's national team. What do you make of this rumor? Do you think there's some realistic opportunity that he might come?
Yeah, I love it. I think it would make a lot of sense for him. I think Celtic is a really interesting spot for guys. We've seen Yorgos Yakimakis come to Atlanta from Celtic. Uh, the league in Scotland is not the most challenging because it's a 2 team league and then there's a huge drop off. You do get European competition there if depending on how long you stay in and which level you're in. But I think MLS has really turned into I think it's a better league than Scotland. I don't think that's really much of a debate at this point. Now,
Mhm,
Celtic and Rangers, you pull them aside, it'd be interesting to see them on an MLS schedule. That would be fascinating. But the league as a whole, MLS is a better league. It's a more challenging league. I think that would be good for him. He's probably going to get paid more. That is another good thing for anybody. Can't complain about that. And I think he would really fit into the style that Ronnie Dyla wants to play. I think he would be a really good addition. It comes down to money. It comes down to the cost. Atlanta's in a better place now than they were in the summer, where it sounds like they went after him in the summer, but couldn't get a deal done. Remember, in the summer, the transfer window for MLS closed 2 weeks before it did for Europe, and Kyogo was linked with moves around Europe as well that didn't come to fruition.
mhm,
But a club is going to take the MLS club's best offer many times and then shop it out for 2 more weeks. Now that's not the case. Now the MLS window is open longer than the window in Europe. I will be very curious to see if this deal comes. I would love it. I think this is a league that should be more appealing to Asian players. I think the style of play, I think the opportunities that come from it for national team play. I think then, depending on your age, I think it does become a springboard to Europe.
mhm,
I think it's been a league that maybe I don't think the league has been reluctant. Maybe some teams and teams all have different personalities they look for and different profiles they look for. I think maybe the Asian player has been reluctant to come to MLS because Europe has always been that push. I think players from the J League, players from the K League would really benefit from Major League Soccer. And I think MLS clubs would really benefit being aggressive in going to recruit players from those leagues too. I know Kyogo's got the European experience, but I would like that to be the first step to Atlanta, for example, signing more players from Japan and South Korea. I think you would have some great talent at good prices that would fit this system and its fan base would fall in love with.
Yeah, no, and it would definitely. I think with the when you bring up the point of like getting Asian players, like because with LA Galaxy they have a couple of
Yep.
Japanese players on their team. Maya Yoshida, who is a longtime captain of the Japanese national team. You have Miki Yamane as well. And then there's been some push. I think yeah, Vancouver and Minnesota's had Korean and Japanese players in the past, and roughly the J League and the K League are on roughly similar levels to MLS. Hit or miss.
Yeah, I think the MLS top end is
Yeah.
probably ahead of that now.
Hmm.
It'd be interesting to compare like the middle and the bottom end of those leagues. I think the J League's higher than the K League. The J League's closer than the K League to MLS.
Hmm.
Uh, but then you have some of the top end talent in MLS that the J League doesn't have. I
Yeah.
mean, Lionel Messi and
Yeah.
Denny
Oh
Bouanga
yeah.
and Ricky Pooch and guys like that are at another level. I just think there's a little bit of a cultural thing to overcome where players, in Japan, in Korea, and other Asian countries, they always see that pathway to Europe.
Hmm.
And it has gone through Germany a lot. Like
Hmm.
that's one league, Italy to a much lesser extent,
Yeah.
but Germany is one. A player that I really started to like before the last World Cup, Shuto Machino
Hmm.
from the J League, who was, I can't remember the club he was at. It was a smaller club, did really well, got into the World Cup squad at the very end.
Hmm.
He went to Holstein Kiel in
Yeah.
the Bundesliga, which is, I mean, it's the Bundesliga, it's a great league, but LA Galaxy,
Yeah.
LAFC,
Hmm.
Atlanta United,
Yeah.
Inter Miami, these are bigger clubs.
Yeah.
They're not as old, they don't have the history, but they're bigger clubs
Hmm.
and bigger fan bases.
Hmm.
And maybe that would have been a bigger move.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that I think will be interesting. And I think Kyogo could be one of those guys like the Galaxy players you mentioned that maybe change that perception a little bit.
And I think it also helps, like, this is like just broader geographical sense that, I mean, America is a big place and we have a lot of, appealing, environments and cities that, could be cool to, at least maybe for, uh, maybe some, not, I mean, older players like that are like 25
Mhm.
and up that might want to, I don't know, raise a family in America or something, never.
Yeah, there's all different situations. Like I think depending on the individual situation, the MLS can be great for a young player coming up to get noticed and be seen worldwide and more than other leagues. I mean, MLS is more easy to watch worldwide than the J League
Mhm.
or the K League or the Argentine League or leagues in South America, Central America.
Mhm.
It's more accessible.
Yeah.
So that's going to help raise your profile.
Mhm.
That tier that you mentioned, those 25, 26-year olds that are, married, having a family, they're thinking about the long term. MLS is incredibly appealing. The players older in their
Yeah.
career, also very, very appealing to come here and play in front of the crowds and in the stadiums that you're going to play in.
Hmm. Speaking of, we talked about some players that have, or other players. Talk about some other players that have come in. We have Matthias Klitsch from, or he came in from DC United via
Yep.
trade, and then we also have signed Will Riley. He was a homegrown player. And we've also, we've let go or traded some players out, whether it's contract expirations or just retirements through Dax McCarty and Quentin Westberg, Tyler Wolf. What do you make of these player movements, whether these players have coming in or leaving? What do you make of how the offseason movement has gone so far?
I like the deal they did to get Mateusz Klick. Very little expenditure for a designated player level guy who won't be a designated player in Atlanta. He had double-digit assists for DC United last year. Not a great DC United team, by the way. So he'll fit into the midfield very well. He gives you the ability to play without a 10. You can move Alexei Moranchuk, who I think will be better in 2025 as well. You
Mhm.
can move him wide, play him as a 10, play two of Click, Sleesh, who I think Bartosz Sleesh will definitely benefit
Yeah,
from
Polish
Click being
connection.
here, the two Polish players who just missed each other on the national team
Yeah.
in their eras. But I think that'll help Sleesh, who really came good in the second half of the year. Jay Fortune as well, who was one of the best players for Atlanta United last year, another homegrown. That midfield is very, very strong. Will Riley will battle for minutes. I think he'll play more with Atlanta United too, at least early on.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy who had a lot of experience with Atlanta United too, back in the USL days before he went to Stanford and played a ton of games at Stanford. So he comes in very seasoned, very good on the ball. I want to see, does he slot in more as a 6, more as an 8? How does he look in that group, and how does he make the jump from college to pro to MLS level pro? The outgoing, they also re-signed Ronald Hernandez. I think was a really good re-sign because Brooks Lennon's going to be out for a little bit here early with the shoulder injury that he suffered in the Miami series. Hernandez, just a glue guy in this team, glue guy in the locker room, glue guy in a training pitch. Uh, One of the best guys that you could ever meet. Really happy for him. I know he loves the city and loves the club, so I'm excited that he's coming back. He'll be very important with Lennon out early on. Um, they also signed a new deal with Efrain Morales. I like that. I like where his development can go, where it can send it. Tyler Wolff moving on is probably the right time. He needs to play, and he's kind of in that spot that young players sometimes get stuck in,
Mm-hmm.
where he's too good for the second team, but
Yeah.
not good enough to get minutes on the first team. And what do you do? Like, he didn't need to play another year more with Atlanta United too. It's not going to help his development. That would just be like for maintenance to keep sharp. So he needs to go somewhere where he's going to play. And I think RSL could be a really good fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not really any other major surprises. Brad Gazan coming back on the option, that wasn't a shock the way that he played. He was Atlanta United's best player in 2024, and he went to a whole nother level in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best series of games that I've ever seen from a goalkeeper at any level, anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because initially, like before the previous season started, like there was questions about okay, how is what's Guzan's gonna look like because we
Yep.
signed Josh Cohen and even when Cohen was he had a couple of run of games there, but he wasn't necessarily he didn't for me Cohen didn't come off as the most impressive in my opinion even though he's not I mean when we signed him he wasn't meant to be like a world beater or anything but to I would have realistically thought that Cohen would have gave Guzan a little bit more running for his money but Guzan had somewhat of a renaissance towards the end of the season so
He was
uh
good throughout the year. I
yeah.
think the other thing is Brad gives you so much personality on and off the field. And that's tough for Josh Cohen to come in and replicate. It's not who he is as a person. He hasn't been here as long as Brad has been. Brad's the captain for a reason. He
Mhm.
does so much for this club on the training pitch, in the locker room, in the community.
Mhm.
All of those things are very, very important. And I think it all adds up to the year that Brad Gazan had meant that he deserved another year for
Mhm.
sure. I do think Cohen and Hibbert are going to be kind of jockeying for who will be next when Brad's time is done. And look, when you're 40, like you're not going to play forever. I don't know if he plays another year, if he plays another 2. I don't know. He's a freak
Mhm.
physically. So like I'm not putting anything past him,
Yeah.
but you do have to think about the future. Cohen is about 10 years older than
Mhm.
Hibbert. Hibbert is very young, very raw, unbelievable shot stopper, very high ceiling. But right now the floor is pretty low. He's got to clean up some things in his game. Cohen is much cleaner. You can rely on him if you need him.
Mhm.
But he's got to grow in some ways as well. I think he's got to be a bigger voice, a bigger personality in that group and find his way to do that.
Mhm. Some other player movements. Daniel Rios, he's returned back to loan with Chief or Guadalajara. What do
Ended
you
up
think?
being a really good addition, Rios. I think he did well. Just a classic number 9. I feel like he's always been in situations where he hasn't been given a huge opportunity. He's made the best that he can of the time that he gets. And I think he did that here. You look at what him and Jamal TRA, who they did re-sign, did after Yakimakis left. The production was better than what Yakimakis gave in the first half of the season. Not
Mhm.
as good as what Yakimakis gave you last year, but Rios and TRA did their jobs.
Yeah.
And, they kind of split time and they were very different kinds of players and they gave you different pluses and minuses. But
Mhm.
Rios, to me, he's a guy that in Liga MX for sure, like, I don't know if he gets the opportunity at Chivas. He should get the opportunity somewhere.
Mhm.
And look, maybe he goes across town to Atlas now with Gonzalo Pineda. Wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Mhm. Yeah. Some other player movements. Well, we do have a couple of Argentine players that we had for a little bit sent on loan, but now they officially kind of we've moved on from them. Franco Ibarra and Santiago Sosa. What do you
Mhm.
make of how those their time here went out?
Sosa never quite got to where I thought that he could consistently. He started really, really well and then was inconsistent. Had a lot of injuries too. He had a lot of bad luck. He was amazing for Racing in their run to the Copa Sudamericana final. He played as a center back and a three a lot of times with them, especially down the stretch. He's in the right spot for him. Just never quite came together here. I think Franco Ibarra could have been more here. He kind of got caught up in a little bit of the roster machinations of MLS and the U22 spots.
Mhm.
You had to clear one to get Edwin Mosquera back, and that was, I think, more complicated than people realized. And also, Mosquera gave you something completely different that you did not have at that point. You had other central midfielders.
Mhm.
Became a little bit of a numbers game for Ibarra. And look, he's made the most of his opportunity. He went to Toronto on loan for the last half of last season and then went to Rosario Central this past year and had a really good season for them. Um, I thought maybe they would pick up an option on him and transfer him. Maybe best thing for the player. They didn't do that because Rosario Central maybe didn't have the money for a transfer fee.
Mhm.
And you do eat a little bit in terms of what you paid to bring him in, which wasn't a ton, but it was something. Maybe you do that because it's the right thing to do in the situation and he gets to stay at a club that he is in a good place
Mhm. And then a couple other players that have spent mainly with the twos. You have Nick Firmino and Eric Centeno. Firmino definitely had a little bit more, slightly more of a run in with the
in. Mm-hmm.
first team, but both of their options were declined. What do you make of their futures and how their time here played out, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think Centeno was a Generation Adidas draft pick, so he never hurt you salary cap wise. He got a lot of experience with Atlanta United too, and I think he really turned into a good fullback at that level. Not an MLS level fullback. He came in as a winger, kind of took a minute to find the best spot for him. But I thought he turned into a really good fullback slash wingback. And, USL championship, probably the best fit. Could be with a different MLS team. I'm not going to put it past him. I think he's very good with the 1v1. His service has to continually improve. Got better as a defender, but probably USL championship. And he would be a really good addition for that. Firmino's fascinating to me because he's a really hard player to define. Doesn't really fit a position. Like he's not exactly a 9. He's not exactly a 10. Kind of an 8,
Mm-hmm.
maybe an attacking 8.
Mm-hmm.
But those are hard positions to fit. And you have to be in the right system for that. New England wasn't the right system for him in the past. It took a while here in Atlanta to find the right way to get the best out of him. And he had an incredible year last year with
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta United too. This year, he was back and forth between the first team and the second team. And his form struggled a little bit, but he did have some moments that he contributed on both sides of that. He just needs to play. He's still young. He's got a good bit of experience for his age, but he needs to play. And in my opinion, he needs to play. I always compared him in a way to Clint Dempsey, who is another one of those guys who didn't really have a position.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of put him in as a 10 and you make it free for him to go play and go find the game. Probably going to be hard for an MLS team to commit to that. You're probably looking at a USL championship level team.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a better player than that. I think he can play at the MLS level. I think he has MLS talent, but I think his game maybe doesn't fit in many MLS teams right now. I'd like to see him in a possession dominant team that gives him free reign to go find the game as a 10 or a second forward, depending on how you want to shape it. That's probably going to be at the USL championship level.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, a couple players that have since retired, which is not exactly too much of a surprise. Dax McCarty and Quentin Westberg. Of course, Dax McCarty, longtime MLS veteran. He is definitely one of those players that he's never. It's kind of a rarity to have kind of be sort of in and out with the national team. Get a somewhat of a run in. Never made or never played over in Europe, but still very solid MLS career nonetheless. What do you make of Dax McCarty's time? He was only in Atlanta for one season, but what do you make of how he handled himself in the league and with the team?
An MLS legend, a great MLS career, one of the best in MLS history. I think sometimes we define players and say that if they're not regular national team players, that they're not great players. And That's not how we do this in other countries, you know? Like the national team, it's a very small number. And I think Dax McCarty in general was just underneath that central midfield level with the national team, just underneath it. Um, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a great player in this league.
Mm.
And, we see this in the Premier League at times where English players who are in that spot just underneath the national team level, it's like, oh, well, they're pretty good, or oh, they've been a disappointment. It's not fair. Dax is a great guy. I think he was a really good addition to the team this year. I know he wanted to play more. He's incredibly competitive. He ended up becoming a really important piece at the end. And that shows a lot about him that he really didn't have a ton of injuries in his career, always stayed fit, always available, was very important for this team in that Miami series. And I think it was very important in a lot of other ways too. Like we interviewed on our SDH network, we interviewed a lot of the young players coming up through Atlanta United too and with the first team. Every single one of them talked about how Dax spent time with them to help them become better players. Not many people do that. So Dax is a legend. Quinn Westberg's a legend as well. This is somebody who had a U.S. youth national team career, had a big win over Argentina in the U20 World Cup, spent a lot of his career in France,
Mhm.
then came to Toronto and had a really good run with Toronto FC. We got him at the very end. One of the nicest guys you could meet, one of the most thoughtful guys that you could meet. I think he's got a bright future in the game. Dax does too. I think Dax is going to be a star on Apple TV next season. Quentin, I can't wait to see what he does. I think he wants to go into the front office club management side of things. I think he's going to come at it from a different perspective. He's very intelligent when it comes to how to deal with people and how to interact with people and get the best out of people. I think whoever brings him into their club in that kind of capacity will get a gym.
Mm. And when you speaking of like front office and behind the scenes stuff, we did bring over Chris Henderson as a sporting director. What do you make of that?
Huge signing. Wasn't really a shock in that he worked with Garth Lagerwey in the past, and it seemed like he was getting pushed out in Miami a little bit. I really like at the press conference, I asked both of them what the other one brought to the relationship to make each other better. And what Garth Lagerwey talked about with Chris was his eye for talent and just an elite talent evaluator. And you look at his Seattle teams and his Miami teams and some of the diamonds in the rough that he brought into those teams. He knows the game so well. He knows this league so well. He's one of those guys that has been involved in the league from before day one. First as a player for him, spent some time as a coach, very little bit of time there, but then in front offices he knows the American player. He knows this league. He knows what kind of players fit here. He knows what kind of players have more to give. So I think you're going to see some very shrewd signings from Chris Henderson joining this front office.
Hmm. And what do you make of like what if based on our current roster structure right now and the new coach, what do you think Atlanta United still needs to try to add as far as like players or a type of player, and who do you think are some current players that's been with the with the team for a little bit, and this season is like a make or break, like hey, you got to try to do something or otherwise we might try to move on. Like what do you make of those two questions?
We talked about the competition in central midfield. I think Tristan Muyumba is going to be one that a lot of eyes will be on early on because he had a better 23 than he did 24. And now you've added Mateusz Klick and Will Riley into that group. So even more competition for playing time. Jay Fortune, I think, emerged as well and maybe changed the pecking order in that group a little bit. So Muyumba will be one for sure that there will be a lot of eyes on. Sean De Silva, there will be another one who there will be a lot of eyes on. Edwin Mosquera. This team still needs a number 9. And you kept Jamal TRA. He will be a very good backup, but you need that. If it's Kyogo, if it's somebody else, you need that guy that can be a top forward in this league. If you get that right, you've got some flexibility with the way the roster is constructed to go get another designated player. You have 2 spots available right now, and you're not necessarily tied to position with that because you've got a pretty good core past that, and you've got different ways you can play. You could play, for example, Klick, Fortune, and Sleesh in the 3-man midfield. Klick can give you the playmaking ability that you need from a little bit deeper position. And then you can play Moranchuk and Sabo Lobjanidze on the wings along with your new number 9. You could play 2 of those central midfielders, play Moranchuk as a 10, go sign a left winger. as a designated player to go along with your number 9. So a lot of flexibility in that second designated player spot. I
Mm.
think you can go get the best player available, but you have to get a number 9. You have to get a number 9, no question. That will probably make or break Atlanta's season in 2025.
Mm. And beside like Kyogo's been like the main one in the rumor mill.
Yeah.
Beside if Kyogo if it doesn't work out with getting him, then who do you think could be some other realistic targets as number 9?
I never play this game because we could sit here and go through a list of players and names that people know and then pull out a whole bunch of names that people don't know, and the signing probably won't be on the list.
Hmm.
It's just the nature of the league. It's the nature of Atlanta United as well. Like, you don't ever hear rumors out of Atlanta on these things. The
Hmm.
rumors are always from the other side, whether it's an agent or another club in another country. That's how the Kyogo one came up. It didn't come up from here. It came up from Scotland. So I don't, I think the profile maybe is the more important thing. And if you're looking at Kyogo as part of that profile, I think you're maybe looking, and you think back to Tati Castellanos, who had a lot of success with Dyla in New York. You're not looking at the old school target 9. I think you're looking for somebody who's got speed,
Hmm.
got pace, can get running in behind. Uh, you want them to be good in the air, but you're not necessarily asking them to score a whole bunch of headers.
Hmm.
Kyogo can do a little bit of everything, and that's if that's what you're looking for. I think that's the part to zero in on, guys who kind of fit that profile and can be available. Atlanta's got money to spend.
Hmm.
Look, if you're talking about what your budget is, I mean, you could go up to $20 million on this transfer if you want. That's going to get you a really good number 9.
Hmm.
You got to get the right one that fits this group, the right one that fits what Ronnie Dylo wants. That's more important than any list we can come up with. If Kyogo is part of that list, I think that should give you an idea of the kinds of players that they're looking at.
Hmm. Yeah, the other player that was kind of even it was kind of interesting that he was also like he also plays for Celtic was Luis Palma was somewhat in the rumor mill too, but I think that's kind of died down a little bit. But what do you?
Yeah, I think that might be a little different too. I mean, that might be a both, not either or situation, because Palma could be that left winger that I mentioned if you're looking for that. Could you sign both? Yeah, you have the money to do it if you want. I don't know if Celtic would be interested in selling both,
Hmm.
uh, but it would be a huge windfall for them. So then they'd be able to go out into the market. So I don't know. I don't think it would be Palma or Kyogo. I think it would be two separate deals that would not be necessarily tied together.
Hmm. And one last thing, the another key departure has was Carlos Bocanegra. What do you make of his time, and was it a surprise to you that we have when the Atlanta United moved on from him?
It wasn't a surprise. Maybe the timing was a little bit of a surprise. I thought maybe that would happen at the end of the season. I It's one of the things that I hate about how the game has turned, and some of it is the way that it's covered in the media, some of it is the way that it's talked about by fans. I think Carlos Bocanegra's time in Atlanta should be absolutely warmly remembered. He helped build this team from scratch. He was part of bringing so many top players into this club. Every big signing that this club has made up to this point, he has been a factor in it. Whether that was going to Italy to sit down with Alexei Miranchuk and sell him on coming to Atlanta, or doing the same when it came to Yorgos Yakimakis, or the same when he went to Argentina and got Thiago Almada or Miguel Almiron. All these guys, Carlos Bocanegra had a hand in it. At times we pick and choose of what we want to give credit to people about. He was there for all of it. So the good, the bad, all of it, he had a hand in. And I think there's been far more good than a lot of people realize in how this team and this club has been run and how it's been handled. And it's a real shame how he has been treated publicly in some of those areas. It is upsetting to me, honestly, in the way that we talk about the game. I mean, it's the way we talk about sports. It's not even purely a soccer thing. Look at the Atlanta Falcons and Raheem Morris, who everybody wanted to fire after he made a mistake not using a timeout.
Hmm.
I'll fire him. No, that's not how anything gets better.
Hmm.
That's not how we fix things. Anytime a signing would happen or didn't happen that people didn't like, the hashtag would fire up about Bocanegra. It's a shame. It's a shame that we live that way. It's a shame that we consume sports that way, because I can tell you that Carlos is an absolute class human being. He is a great family man. He's a great person. He was always good to me when he didn't have to be. And that's the sign of a good person. And I really hate how things turned for him in terms of public perception. History will see that what he did here in helping build this team from scratch and being part of Atlanta United for almost a decade, he did a lot of amazing work here. And I hope that gets remembered more so than hashtags down the line.
Hmm. Cool. Jason, I want to say thank you very much for having the time to appear again on the Soccerpedia podcast, and looking forward to a successful 2025 with Atlanta United. And any departing words from this episode, Jason?
Can't wait. Always fun chatting with you. Always fun getting ready for another season. Make sure you're following me at Longshoe on all your social media platforms. You can follow at Soccer down here as well. And all of our stuff on 92.9 The Game. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Woodwork wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll get all of our soccer content from 92.9.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
You too.